Viewer discretion is advised.
I do have the fan pick case this week.
Oh,
So it's
good.
sad.
And let me tell you, this case has everything.
Why do you guys do this to us?
No, I mean, it's not like what happens here is great, but it's pretty good.
Oh, okay.
This case has murder, love in lockdown, weed, moonshine, Benicio del Toro, and Patricia Arquette. Patricia.
Patricia Arquette.
There's a lot. Peanut Arquette.
Peanut.
Peanut. There's a lot going on here, and because of the format of the show, I cannot cover every single detail because it's literally a mini series.
And a really thick book.
It's so thick. So for the interest of me being able to follow all of this, I'm going to focus on our ringleader, convicted murderer, Richard Matt.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what this even is. Okay.
It'll become clear.
I mean, it will, but also there was another case in the news really recently that's really similar, but it's not this case.
Okay.
So it's like, it's happened before.
Cowboy, take me away.
Yeah. So Richard was born and raised in upstate New York, just outside of Buffalo. And Richard was a real piece of work from the beginning.
Yeah.
Probably because his dad was also a piece of work and an abusive piece of shit.
Mm-hmm.
He never met a hard day's work in his life, lol Dickie. And his tendency to cut corners landed him in and out of jail constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And he loved to escape or weasel his way out through trickery when he would end up in jail. So this is a quote from Wikipedia, quote, in June 1986, he climbed a fence to escape from the Erie County Correctional Facility where he was serving a 1-year sentence for assault. According to retired Tonawanda policeman David Bentley, Matt evaded police for 4 days, hopped a freight train to his brother's house in Tonawanda, where he was ultimately apprehended.
All
In
right.
1990, yeah, so he's got a pattern. In 1991, Matt convinced fellow prisoner David Telstar to pay $15,000 bail to get him released while awaiting trial for rape and assault.
Don't love that.
Yeah, which he did. So David paid his bail and got Richard Matt out. And Richard Matt then informed on Telstar, who pleaded guilty to promising Richard Matt an additional $100,000 in a murder for hire scheme. So he's like, I'll pay for you to get out, and if you kill this person I want you to kill, I'll give you another $100,000. And instead, Richard Matt was like, ha ha ha, bye, I'm going to just tattle on you and not kill anyone for you.
Got it.
Okay. So just don't trust this guy.
No.
And Richard Matt did not receive a reduced sentence for informing on Telstar. So it's like nobody really won. They were just like, go back to jail. This is fucking stupid.
Go lay
you guys
down.
are dumb. Yeah, go all the way. Go lie down.
Make.
All the way.
Make.
Dickie, make.
Benicio, make.
So, in December of 1997, Richard and an accomplice, Lee Bates, kidnapped his 76-year-old former boss, a man named William Rickerson, believing that Bill Ricky, Lil Dicky kidnapped Bill Ricky, believing that's really sad, but these names are amazing. Believing that that Bill Ricky had access to a large sum of money and they could like make off with it.
Mm-hmm.
William did not have access to a large sum of money, but no amount of explaining this to Richard convinced him.
Scary.
So, yeah. So he and Lee drove around for like a day and a half with William in the trunk of the car, stopping every few hours to beat William and demand to know where the money was.
Oh, my God.
Finally, Richard's assaults went way too far, and he broke William's neck with his bare hands, killing him.
He was motivated.
Yep.
This guy sucks.
Oh, he's a psycho. So freaking out that he'd actually killed William, he decided to get rid of evidence by dismembering William and tossing his parts into a river in upstate New York. He then
Which really makes no sense if you think about it, because you're just expanding the likelihood of someone finding a body part
You're making more evidence somehow.
If
Yeah.
you're going to dismember, you're better off burying the parts way far apart than throwing them all into a river where they're
just
gonna
gonna wash
float
up in the
or
same
wash up.
area. Yeah.
Idiot.
They're gonna get caught in all the same net.
Really does not
This
make
guy's not
sense.
smart. He's
No.
just a fucking psycho.
Okay.
He then fled the United States and went to Mexico. Broke and wandering the city of Matamoros, Richard found himself at a bar where he encountered a man named Charles Perrault.
Perot.
Yeah, I nailed it. When Charles got up to go to the bathroom, Richard followed him. He stabbed him 9 times in the back, killing him for $300 cash.
Just because this guy had cash on him.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, he was like in the bar.
This is
Charles
why
was
I
there.
don't carry cash.
Right. Charles.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's also the 90s. Like,
That's
the 90s in fucking Mexico. He's at a bar. He's paying for his drinks in cash. Richard sees that he's paying in cash.
It
and
might
is
as
like,
well
I'm
have
gonna
been
go
50
fucking rob
bucks
this guy.
cash, and he probably would
Yeah.
have done the same thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He didn't give a fuck. Like, the cash was like one tiny
He
bit
needed
of the motivation.
cash.
Yeah. This guy is just a psychopath.
Doesn't have anything to lose, or at least
Right.
doesn't think he does.
No, and I think he likes killing people
Yeah.
also. So he was caught quickly by Mexican authorities and sentenced to 23 years in prison for murder. But remember, old Dickie doesn't like to sit in prison.
Mm-mm.
So he tried to escape a few years into his sentence. I'm burping. But was hunted down and shot 9 times in the back by Mexican officials, like
Oh my
prison guards.
God.
Wow.
He survived, but Mexican authorities were like, fuck this guy, and sent him back to the US to finish out the rest of his sentence. So he's sent back to upstate New York, and this is where shit gets real spicy.
They probably just didn't want to deal with his medical shit from shooting him 9 times.
That and like, he's a violent offender who is trying to escape. I'd probably be like, fuck you, go home too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
if
someone
anybody
else
else
could
will
deal with
take
him.
you.
Let your
Right.
homeland deal with you.
And
Right.
the US, they wanted him for the murder of William, so they're going to take him.
Great.
Who fucking cares where he's finishing it off? Anyway,
Right.
so now it's 2007. Richard is serving his time at the Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York.
There
I
it is.
totally know where these places are.
Yeah, you are.
Dannemora is the title of that book. The big, the thick one.
Okay.
While in prison, he meets a man named David Sweat.
Okay.
Yes, Sweat.
Mm-hmm.
David had already been in prison for several years for murder, but not just any murder, the murder of a cop.
Oh.
David, his cousin Jeffrey Nabinger Jr., and an associate named Sean Duvall stole a fuck ton of firearms in July of 2002 while they were unloading the stolen firearms. They're like in a park at like 3 a.m. They're unloading them from the car they'd used for the theft and transferring them to another vehicle. And while they're doing that, Sheriff's Deputy Kevin J. Tarsia happened upon them. And this
Shit.
is from Ramper.com. Quote, the 3 men tried to hide, but as Tarsia shone his flashlight around the scene, it was around 3:30 in the morning, he found them. Sweat, who is holding a loaded gun in one hand and an unloaded gun in the other, claims that the police officer reached for his firearm. Kind of makes sense. 3:30 in the morning, people with a fuck ton of guns.
Yeah.
It's like I don't like the cops either, but that's
That's
what's
their
gonna
job
happen.
in that
Yeah.
situation.
In that context, yep. So as the police officer was reaching for his firearm, Sweat drew his weapon first and shot at him 22 times. But he didn't die. And like this guy, he eventually dies. But like
what is this case with people being shot? It's like a video game.
Yeah.
It's nuts. So one bullet penetrated Tarsia's body armor, so he was wearing like a bulletproof vest. And he went down, but he was still struggling and reaching for his gun as he remained alive. Sweat then ran over Tarsia several times with his car,
Oh my God.
which his defense attorneys claim he did out of panic. Tarsia is still alive. He's got several broken bones, but still alive. Finally, Nabinger Jr. picked up Tarsia's firearm and shot Tarsia twice in the face at point blank range, killing him.
Oh, that poor officer. That's horrible.
I
That's
know.
a
That's a
horrible,
fucking
horrible
really
death.
gnarly way to go.
Yeah.
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 It's awful. So after a manhunt, the trio was eventually apprehended and confessed to the murder. On July 21st of 2002, Sweat pleaded guilty to 1 count of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole, and I believe the other 2 individuals that were involved were also sentenced to life in prison. But they're not relevant to the rest of the story.
Okay.
So David had been a model prisoner despite the heinousness of his crime. He didn't get into fights. He didn't fuck with prison guards. He just kept to himself.
Okay.
Richard was not a great influence on David. And when David's fear of the violence in the prison led him to request a transfer to a less dangerous spot, he thought he might have a way to survive his life sentence if he could get moved out of this prison that he was in. But his request was denied. So when Richard was like, hey, buddy, I've escaped from prison a bunch of times before.
Yeah, I got this idea.
Dave,
I'm on board.
Yeah. And David's like, okay, I think I might die in here. Let's do this.
Right.
So how would they do this? By Shawshanking it, of course.
Of course. I'm
They got
surprised
to
they
work.
let anybody have posters in prison.
Well, this was not a post. Well, maybe there was a poster involved or something to cover up the back wall, but this is a digging situation, not really a poster situation.
Okay.
So they got to work on digging a tunnel, plotting, and working together as next door cell neighbors. So they're not in the same cell because they're each in their own, but they live next door to each other. They're neighbors.
They can communicate probably.
Correct, because it's just bars and then a wall.
So a
David
wall
and-
between them, but then bars
Yep,
on
but
a
bars
traditional
on the front. Yep,
cell.
exactly.
Okay.
So they could talk to each other. We'll kind of get to this later too, but they were also in despite this is what's kind of crazy to me. They must have done well. David certainly was a model prisoner, so that's why he would be in this ward. I don't really know what the deal was with Richard. He must have been on his best behavior because they were in a pretty privileged area of the prison.
Okay.
Not like it was necessarily low security.
but they each had their own rooms.
They had their
That
own rooms.
sounds nice.
They had access to
room.
television. Well, their own cell. They didn't have roommates. They had
I
access
know.
to TV. They had commissary access. They had, it was kind of a
Privileges.
chill, privileged area.
Maybe
as
there
far
was an
as maximum
overcrowding
security prison stuff.
situation in the max stuff where they were just like,
Maybe,
well,
but
put
it
'em
was
where I can
also,
get them.
it was also noted in multiple sources where I got my research for this that David was a model prisoner before this. So I think that there's possible overcrowding, but I think they had just been on really good behavior and it was okay, we're going to transfer you over here.
Okay.
So once David, so they're digging and digging and digging and digging, and we'll kind of get to what they used and how they got tools to do this. Once David's success, they're digging through the wall in the back of each of their cells. So they're both digging and they're right next door to each other. They're making an access point, and then David kind of takes over. And David successfully accesses these steam pipes that are underneath the cell, behind the wall and down. And I didn't include a lot about this, but he was also super fucking clever. He fashioned, because the steam pipes are really hot, and he was back there digging, following these massive steam pipes to figure out where they end so he could make a pathway out. And so he wired his own electronics to a little fan that he got from commissary or something. He took
To cool it off.
Yeah, he got this little fan for his cell from commissary, removed the plug that goes to the wall, and then wired the fan along the way into different spots where they wire lighting for the rest of the prison, so that as he was working on this, he could fan away the steam and keep himself cool back
oh, moving
Oh.
along the.
there. Yeah,
Wow.
So
cool.
he didn't steam his own face off.
exactly. I was like, okay, David,
All right.
MacGruber over here. I see it.
Does the steam also run all of the time, or is it for 5 minutes every hour? So
I don't know, but it's hot.
it's hot.
Once a steam pipe, always a steam pipe. Am I right?
That's what I
So-
keep saying.
That old chestnut. So once David successfully accessed the pipes, he would take nightly recon missions after the 10:30, 11:30 bed checks, seeking a solid route out of the prison. So he had access to some tools on the privileged unit that he and Richard were housed on already, because they would have projects and work assignments and whatever. But reports also indicated that they had help from the outside from a prison guard named Gene Palmer, who admitted to investigators that he smuggled tools into the prison and did other favors for Richard Matt in exchange for paintings.
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 Apparently, Dick was a hell of a painter.
Wow.
And I have included some of his paintings on the drive.
Yes.
And this man definitely loved to do celebrity portraits.
Oh, of course.
Oh, he
So,
was good though.
He's really talented. Julia Roberts is a little busted.
Oh yeah,
But,
Julia didn't nail Julia, but wow.
Didn't nail Julia. Did a really good job
Nailed
on
Barack.
Angelina
Clintons.
Jolie. The Clintons look great.
Hillary.
Barack Obama looks great.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
Marilyn Monroe, stun. We got Martin Luther King in here.
Angelina.
He's not bad.
He's really
The
not
Angelina
bad.
portrait's really good. Yeah, he's a good painter.
Horrible
Wow.
human, but great artist.
Bad fucking person.
Yeah.
Hell of a painter.
How weird.
So weird. So Gene Palmer said, quote, Matt provided me with an elaborate painting and information on the illegal acts that inmates were committing within the facility. So he was like still
Also
informing.
Okay.
Mhm. In turn, I provided him with benefits such as paintbrushes, movement of inmates. Like if he wasn't getting along with someone, he could have them moved away from him. Hamburger meat, like frozen meat, which like we'll kind of get to it, but some of the tools that were being smuggled in by not only this guy, but also someone who became his lover, a woman who worked in the prison. They would
Frozen
smuggle
hamburger meat, always
Yes.
erotic.
No, but kind of. But also they would like hide tools that they were smuggling in inside these big ass packages of frozen meat that they were bringing in.
Okay.
He would alter the electrical boxes in catwalk areas, probably as part of like the way that David could wire his like fans and other shit behind the
so
scenes.
the lights wouldn't flicker or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And this is from the New York Times because it's like, at this point I'm thinking, okay, they're fucking like drilling and hammering and whatever into concrete walls.
Yeah.
Like even if you have
Metal
one
ductwork.
Yeah, like even if you have one guard and like one prison
There's
employee,
only
you
so much
know-
coughing and shuffling one of them can do to hide the sound.
Exactly. So I'm like, how the fuck did they deal with this? So this is from the New York Times. Quote, an inmate asked about the noise, telling Mr. Matt that he heard something that sounded like sawing. So Mr. Matt, Richard Matt, a painter who had provided some of his works to at least one corrections officer in exchange for favors, told the inmate that he had been stretching canvas on and working on frames. Mr. Sweat said this to the investigators. Mr. Sweat found a spot in a tunnel that ran beneath the prison's outer walls where a series of pipes passed through the tunnel wall. Mr. Sweat told the investigators that he could see along the length of the pipes as they traveled through the wall that they emerged on the other side in another tunnel some 20 feet away. Outside the prison walls, using a sledgehammer and some other pilfered hand tools, he began to chip away at the concrete of the tunnel wall. Because of the dust and grime, he would take a second set of clothes into the tunnel to serve as work coveralls.
Oh yeah, so he doesn't like emerge fucking dusty as shit every day.
Exactly.
Every morning.
So basically, they like brushed off the initial sound that other people would be able to hear by being like, oh yeah, I make these paintings for people. I'm like building canvases and shit. It's really loud. Then David is like deep enough into the tunnels where people can't necessarily hear him, but he's getting filthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's accommodating for that, like, as well. It's actually kind of an organized operation.
It's interesting.
Yeah. It's gotta be.
Yeah.
I mean, fuck
So-
this guy, but interesting.
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, fuck them both. But
Right.
like, also, you do you, boo. So on the morning of June 6th, 2015, guards performed their 5:30 a.m. bedroom check to account for all the prisoners. Dick and Sweat had padded their beds.
Sweat.
Dick and Sweat.
Somehow I hadn't put it together
Yeah, honey.
the two
Richard,
at once. I hate it.
Dick and Sweat.
Dick and Sweat.
I
Ugh.
can't. Dick and Flicka. Dick and Sweat.
Just digging tunnels.
Uh-huh. They'd padded their beds to make it look like they were asleep in them, but guards figured it out pretty quickly that they weren't actually in their beds and sounded the alarm. Their plan was going pretty well until they got outside of the prison walls and realized their promised ride, a female employee, I wrote guard, but she wasn't a guard. She was just an employee in the prison, named Joyce Mitchell, who they had seduced into assisting them, was not there to pick them up. Like she was going to be waiting at the
Flaky
exit
Joyce.
point. Well, it wasn't necessarily Flake, and we'll get to it. Obviously, they couldn't wait around to find out if she would ever show, so they took off on foot into the woods nearby. They spent weeks out in the cold, like swampy, cold.
Upstate New York.
Upstate New York. It's July, but it's like not hot. They're sleeping on wet ground, or they're hiding up, or sorry, it's not July, it's June, but still. June in upstate New York can be like June in Minnesota, where it could like literally still snow.
Could be cold at night and
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
wet and bugs.
It's like
rain.
50 degrees at night.
Yeah.
So sometimes they would just sleep on the ground, or they would like go up into deer stands, like hunting stands that were all over the woods. They had been...
Sorry, they're still in their prison clothes? Like they just have their own...
Yes, for now.
Okay.
So initially, I think it's like the first few days, they're like trying to get their bearings. They're out in the cold. They're in the woods. They're climbing into these deer stands. They just have like the little bit that they had packed on them, like some food rations. They'd also collected black pepper from meal times over the previous several months and like sprinkled what they could to cover their scent from dogs to like throw the dogs off. And it actually kind of worked. Like dogs would pick up scent on them and then get confused and lose the scent.
Imagine not changing your underwear for weeks living in
I
the
know.
woods.
Yeah.
No.
Rinsing it off in a stream. No, thank you.
Like, if that.
They had packed some toiletries and razors so they could like blend in with the public when they eventually, got out of the woods rather than looking like grizzled fugitives.
Smart.
And then they started breaking into empty like hunting cabins to get like a break from the cold, get a warm bed, make a meal. And they would do it like during the week because people were almost never there during the week. They were like these weekend cabins.
City folk come up
Yep.
on the weekends.
Yeah,
Upstate.
going to the lake,
Going
hunting.
up north.
Going up north. In one such cabin, they also found a fuck ton of moonshine and a big ass bag of weed,
Nice.
all of which they went through in about 2 days before moving on to the next spot, a cabin in a corrections officers camp. So they're starting to realize that like, oh shit, a lot of these cabins belong to COs that work at this prison.
Because they
which
live
is like-
nearby.
Because they live nearby. So it's like kind of a risk, but it's also kind of smart
Yeah.
because a lot of the cabins had, like, say, the weed, the moonshine, like a lot of contraband in them. And so they were way less likely to report the break-ins because they didn't want to lose their jobs.
What's
Yeah.
missing? A pound of weed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it actually kind of, like, it seemed really sketchy, but it actually kind of worked in their favor.
Oh.
So one of these like CO cabins that they broke into, they stole a shotgun and some corrections uniforms, but I don't think they used the corrections uniforms. Like one article said they did take them. Another article said they left the uniforms behind. Maybe they just wore them to get warm and then they were like, this isn't going to work. We'll just take plain clothes so that we're like
Right.
less conspicuous. And then they moved on.
It's probably would be great to have those if you're still inside the prison, but once you're
Exactly.
already out, it might
It's
not
gonna
be
raise
that
some-
helpful. Yeah.
It's going to raise a brawl.
Right.
But the weed and booze was too tempting for some of them. And Richard would get absolutely plastered, much to David's dismay. Quote, I got in an argument with him because every place we'd go, I'd get drunk, Mr. Sweat complained.
I mean, that is
And
what
he-
cabins are for, but fine.
1,000%. No. Yeah.
And deer stands.
Exactly. And he would drink when we were moving. I'm like, dude, you can't be drunk when we're moving. You have to be sober. Like if
Yeah,
we're
don't slow
sneaking from
me
place to
down.
place. Exactly.
We're not having fun.
No, we're not going to the cabin.
I'm being quiet.
I am quiet. I got
I'm fine.
it. You guys, I got
Oh my
it.
God.
I
You're
got
not
it.
my mom.
God.
Narc.
Such a narc. So again from the New York Times, quote, the two men found a transistor radio and a refrigerator full of beer at another cabin. In addition to helping them keep track of where the authorities were searching for them, For them, the radio also provided some measure of entertainment and satisfaction. Quote, it was actually kind of a running joke between him and me because on the radio, they're like, oh, they're not woodsmen, this and that, Mr. Sweat said, and we'd laugh about it. It's funny, we're not woodsmen, and we've been in the woods for weeks, then he gloated. They can't catch us, but we're not woodsmen, Mr. Sweat said. But he said that Mr. Matt, 49 at the time, had reckless ideas like shooting troopers, carjacking passersby on the rural roads, or sticking people up in their homes and taking their money and cars.
Because he's the one that likes to kill people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
They
after
have
2
different
weeks,
philosophies.
totally different philosophies, different approaches. So after 2 weeks, Mr. Matt began to wear on Mr. Sweat. With the hunters in hot pursuit, Mr. Sweat left him behind. I said, you know what? I hate to do it to him, but I kept my part of the deal. I got him out and I bolted on him.
Good.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, fucking leave him. He's a psycho and he's
Yeah.
gonna
Gonna get you
ruin
into
this for
way
you.
more trouble. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, not that you don't deserve it, but still. So at this point, more than 800 state and local federal law enforcement officers were searching for Matt and Sweat, following more than 700 leads because people would keep like thinking they saw them places.
800 officers looking for these people.
Yeah.
Wow.
They said, well, it's 2 murderers on the loose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This had become one of the biggest manhunts in American history. And at this point, it had been weeks since their escape and the like trail had seemingly gone cold. Like dogs would keep losing their fucking scent. They're moving constantly.
I really remember this.
It was kind of a big deal.
I don't know why
It
I
was only like
following
5 years ago. It was,
Yeah,
it was a
2015.
big deal.
Yeah.
Joyce Mitchell, the female employee who had assisted the dynamic duo, was arrested because they pretty quickly figured out that she had been helping them.
So she helped them with saying she'd give them a ride. Was she
She offered them a
smuggling
ride.
the tools to them?
She helped smuggle tools, and she had inappropriate relationships with at least one of them, but probably both.
I know I know she had sex with Benicio del Toro.
Yep, there's also another part of it that we'll get to. So
Oh.
the female employee who had assisted the dynamic duo was arrested. She not only offered a ride to safety that she couldn't provide because she'd landed in the hospital with chest pain like the morning of their
She
escape.
had a panic attack.
She's nervous.
She probably
Yeah.
thought she was having a heart attack.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She also provided tools used in their dig, but she wasn't in it for Richard Matt's paintings. She was David Sweat's lover and possibly also Richard's lover.
She
So
was
they
in it for
both
the
were-
dick sweat.
They both were sleeping with her. And she was helping them in exchange
That
for their
dusty dick
promise. So gross. She was helping them in exchange for their promise to murder her husband, Lyle, so that they could all run off together.
Oh, yeah. That's what it was.
Oh,
Yep.
Joyce.
yeah, honey. No.
Wow. And
Joyce
what's
isn't
his
the
name?
brightest crayon.
Dick has already tried this whole bribe me
Yep.
into becoming your hitman. Actually, I'm going to
Yep.
screw you over.
Yep. Ultimately, she didn't want to go through with it, so Lyle survived. Hopefully, he got a nice and easy divorce with his wife in prison and like adultery and a
Yikes.
murder plot.
Expedited by the courts.
I hope so. Hope it wasn't too lengthy. So things finally came to an end on June 26th, 2015, 20 days after their escape. Honestly, if I were I remember living in upstate New York. It's like a big area that could feel a lot like a small town.
Yes. Tons
And
of small-ish towns and
little
woods.
towns, so many woods, like
And,
one
like,
fucking major
interstates.
highway. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I had been living there at the time of this, I'd probably be freaking out. Almost a month with 2 fucking murderers on the loose.
Yeah. A lot of people
No thanks.
live, they're not living in big cities or even like suburban
Right. They're in these little, like,
isolated
baby
homes.
towns. Yeah, along the fucking thruway. So, things finally come to an end on June 26, 2015. They've been out for 20 days, drunk, wandering alone, breaking into cabins. Richard, Matt, because now they've split up. David's like, you're a mess. You're going to get me fucking killed. I'm
Yeah.
out of here. Richard's still kind of wandering around. He gave himself away when a cabin owner called the police to report that his cabin, so like not a CO, it was just like
Some
some
regular
guy.
cabin owner.
Yeah, who's like, I don't give a shit. I'm going to actually fucking call the cops. Reported that his cabin had been broken into and a bottle of gin was sitting open on the kitchen table, just left there.
That is so scary. Imagine going to your cabin and then it's like someone's been in there. Ugh,
Fucking
Recently.
It would be, and someone's been in there and is like confident enough and doesn't give enough fucks to even try to cover their tracks. They just leave the gin bottle that they were drinking from on the kitchen. That's like really creepy.
And
I don't
I'm sure
like that.
if I was following this case and I wasn't even in the country,
everybody in that
this area is following
high
it.
alert.
You know exactly who was drinking that gin.
1,000% fucking %. 1,000%. So Richard had left that cabin, but he wasn't far. He was making his way to the Canadian border, and he was confronted by a Border Patrol agent. He revealed the shotgun that he had stolen from one of the CO's cabins. The Border Patrol agent opened fire on him, shooting him twice in the head and once in the neck, killing him instantly. So
Wow.
Dick Matt, gone. Dead.
Dick's out.
Dick's out. Dick's out for Jesus.
Dick's out.
2 days later, a few miles away, also making his way to the Canadian border, David Sweat was spotted by a cop meandering in an alfalfa field. This is like kind of my favorite part.
He's definitely the more sensitive of the two.
He totally is. He's just like, oh,
He's a poet.
Again from the New York Times, quote, the sergeant tried to call to Mr. Sweat to come back to the road saying, come here. But Mr. Sweat responded with, nah, I'm good. And kept walking. He started moving faster. The sergeant swore at him. He started running behind me, Mr. Sweat recalled. I took off. The next thing he says, I'm going to shoot you. If you don't stop, I'm going to shoot you. I said, I ain't got no weapons. I don't have no weapons. Mr. Sweat said he held his hands up so the trooper could see he was unarmed, but he also kept running. The tree line got closer. He dropped the bag he was carrying. The sergeant got down on one knee, carefully set up his shot, and fired. He hit me twice, and it was the first he hit me in the shoulder on the top, Mr. Sweat said. It killed this whole arm. I couldn't move it. And the other one was on the other side. I thought, man, I'm going to hit the ground. And I just started spitting blood up. He hit my lung. David survived. And after recovering in the hospital, was returned to prison, where he pleaded guilty to first-degree escape and promotion of prison contraband, and had 7 years added to his life sentence. And that wild ride for him was finally over.
And probably some lasting physical complaints from being shot in the lung.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, not feeling great. And if you're wondering, I know that Lucy's mentioned this a little bit, but if you're wondering where Patricia Arquette and Benicio del Toro come in, Ben Stiller directed them in Escape at Dannemora, a dramatic retelling that you can stream on Showtime and I think Amazon Prime.
I think Hulu also is where I watched it.
And Mr. Sweat did not like that project.
Oops, sorry.
Did not like how he was portrayed.
You're a murderer.
Tough shit.
Cares?
I'm going to leave you with this outrage from the Daily Mail. This guy wrote fucking a 2-page letter to Ben Stiller, which I did put on the drive so that you can have some reading later. But here are some quotes. This is from the Daily Mail. Prison escapee David Sweat has blasted Ben Stiller, claiming the director's Golden Globe nominated drama about his Shawshank Redemption-like breakout is full of lies. It would be my suggestion that you stick to comedies and movies, Mr. Stiller, before you really ruin people's lives with false docuseries or get better fact checkers.
Yes, that's what ruined his life.
Yeah,
was Ben
Look
Stiller.
at this man's handwriting.
I know.
I like
it's
that he
very
made-
childlike.
he
It looks
made
like my
his
old
own-
diary.
He made his own like stationery with like a letterhead.
He did.
It looks
It's very special.
It just looks like a middle school girl's handwriting.
Diary.
I like if he dotted all of the I's with hearts, it wouldn't even shock me a little bit based on that handwriting. The convicted cop killer wrote in a letter exclusively obtained by Daily Mail TV. Sweat is particularly peeved about scenes where he is shown calling prison worker Joyce Tilly Mitchell mommy while having sex with her.
Oh.
You made it really messed up, Sweat wrote in a 2-page letter. You have me calling her mommy, as if I had some weird psychological disorder or physical fantasy that when I'm sleeping with a woman, I'm imagining that I'm sleeping with my mother. What the fuck? That is so messed up and an illegal defamation.
Also, he spells psychological, psychological, Phy,
Yep.
Yep.
nailing
Psychological
it.
disorder.
defamation. which I can.
Wow.
That one's more phonetic, but yeah.
Yeah.
The eyes, it's so swirly. It's so the handwriting is bizarre.
It's literally the handwriting of like a 13-year-old who is practicing their penmanship in one of those school booklets.
I like his eyes, though. His eyes have a special little swirl.
Hey, it's cute.
Look at his M for Mr. Stiller.
It's very special.
Wow.
I never killed anyone.
Lots of exclamations.
Yeah.
I, as
handwriting.
his editor, would not have allowed this out the door, but I like the personality behind it. Not his personality, but the letter's personality. Wow.
Yeah. And he says that he and Matt bonded over a love of good food and really strong coffee! Exclamation point.
There you go.
Read this letter,
Nothing
folks.
like it.
This
You gotta
is
read the
wild.
letter.
It is absolutely unhinged, and I am
Take
really
that, Ben Stiller.
Yeah, suck it, Ben Stiller. I also love that it says, I've not been able to watch your series because I am in solitary confinement and probably will be for the foreseeable future because I embarrass and expose the Department of Corrections and law enforcement.
So how did he even hear about it? He just read articles about it and found out that
I would
there's a
assume,
scene?
or maybe he still has family or friends on the outside that are like,
or the
hey,
prison
man.
guards, his new prison guards are teasing him and being like, oh, you like to call her mommy?
1,000%. There'd be like a million ways for him to find out some of these like juicy tidbits of this series.
Wow.
He's already so fucking famous from this insane prison break. And now this series, Mr. Sweat, now this very successful series comes out. People are going to fucking poke at him about it, I'm sure.
Interesting.
Well,
Isn't it wild? Anyway, that's my case. Thank you, fan picker. It was awesome. I was aware of this case, like Kenyon said, as it was happening, but I hadn't really looked too much into it, and I have not watched the Ben Stiller series, so now I'm gonna fucking do that. Yeah,
I have
100%
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Well, I sure hope you liked that clip. If you did like that clip, make sure you are subscribing to our YouTube channel, leaving us a nice review, and joining us on Patreon for even more video content, audio content, salacious content all around. Come join us. Treat yourself.